Blessed is the one who does not walk in the step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaves does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. Not so the wicked. They are like chaff that wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteousness. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked leads to destruction. Here ends the reading.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome once again to our service here today. We do want to send a special hello to those watching around the world, and those online, as well as those that will watch it later, and those listening to our podcast stream as we go online here today. I got to send another special shout out to Mexico City, because there's just so many of you that are listening to our podcast. Hola! I want to learn some Spanish and preach one day in Spanish to you, but thank you for listening. Thanks to those that will join and watch this, and those at home that are sick, being with us here today. If you want to just open with a word of prayer. Lord, may the words of my mouth, the meditation of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight. O Lord, our rock, our redeemer. Amen. Amen. Well, as I mentioned last week, this week starts a new sermon series. Yay! I'm trying to train you. A couple of you have gotten it. That's right. Yay! I'm so excited. And I'm very, very excited about our slide here today. You see, I made this myself, and I went into Photoshop, and I said, okay, I'm going to get this here, and how do I turn this gold? And of course, I thought it would be, like, click a little button, put a little paint, and click it in. And I learned you can't do that. Right? And so I spent, first of all, I had to get on YouTube, and I spent 2 hours making sure the gold on this sermon series slide was perfect. So it's kind of a confessional to you that I wasted some time this week. But nonetheless, it's gold. Right? And that is gold like no other gold could be. It's got super shininess to it. It's sparkle. So I'm really, really pleased with how it turned out. But you may not be able to read the wording on the slide, and it says this: the plucking. And you say to yourself, Pastor, you are a weird pastor. And I say, I know, but I've been here a year, and you didn't get rid of me, so that's your fault. But we have a great time here with us. If you're joining with us the first time, we do laugh a lot and have a good time. But this sermon series is called The Plucking, and the reason for that is pretty simple, actually, is because you know the book of Psalms in the Bible. And this is going to be a sermon series, and we're going to go through just different psalms of the Bible and just enjoy them for what they are. I'm going to be preaching from those. Of course, today we're going to be doing, we'll start with chapter verse 1, and go from there. So we're doing Psalm 1. But we're going to do some other psalms as we go along. And the cool thing about that is the word psalm is Greek, or it comes from the Greek word psalmoi. And here's what it means. It means to strike the musical instrument. So you can almost, some people even argue that it only means that. It's almost like an automatopoeia kind of thing, where it's like, you can imagine like a guitar or a lyre. Psalmoi, kind of coming back, psalmoi. The striking of a musical instrument, especially a corded one, like a lyre, like King David, for instance, would have played. As we know, many of the psalms are attributed to him and his likeness, and so as we're here today, we call it the plucking, because when I don't just strum, I pluck the guitar when I play it. No. But I enjoy that name, and I just wanted us to remind ourselves, when we read the Psalms, part of when we read them, they're not just poetry like we often think. They were music. And they were sung by the Hebrew people over and over again. And they were sung as songs of joy, songs of discomfort, songs of hurt feelings, songs of yearning for God, songs of this and this and this and this, of all the human experience that we endure ourselves. Put in words, put to music, specifically with some strumming going along with it. But I know if you're like me, I enjoy some strumming. I play guitar, I have for years. I should probably say I used to play guitar because then I had babies. And for 2 years, I think I've touched the instrument twice, right? So I don't know if I really play anymore or can even pick it up, but hopefully it's like a bike, and one day I will. But if you think about a song, even today, there's some truths to songs and why people sing them. In every culture, every place, everywhere. When you think about a song, a couple things probably come to mind. First of all, they express emotions, don't they? And they express emotions in ways that maybe words themselves just can't, or logic can, if you use a rational argument, right? You could say, my heart is beating at 42, or 42 beats per minute. Or you could say, my heart has become a lead stone. It means something different, right? When you put it to music, it almost has even more of an expression, more of a feeling if you have music that matches those words. It's also used to teach and to train, right? You think about in school, a lot of times music is used to learn a song and to train. With my babies, we watch a lot of Finding Nemo, and one of the characters is Mr. Ray. Mr. Ray runs around, right, and he's singing things like, let's name the zones, the zones, the zones, let's name the zones of the ocean floor. Ocean sea, actually, right? But anyways, and so this is ingrained in me. I have been taught the zones of the ocean by watching Finding Nemo and hearing the song over and over and over. But songs often use striking imagery, metaphor, hyperbole, and etc., all the things of poetry, too. And so when you come to a song, you don't want to take it too literally. You want to let it express itself in ways that are powerful, ways that maybe even not bend the truth, but just stretch it to be even truer, if you will, in those senses. But maybe most importantly, what songs do more than almost anything else is they help us to remember and relive. So whether it's a dirge, a song of mourning, whether it's a song of jubilee, whether it's a song of just giving thanks and praise, they help us to relive and to remember. And so as we come to the book of Psalms, it's important for us to remember these things and ask the question, when you read a song, what is this trying to express? What truth is this trying to teach or train? What imagery is being used to drive it home to our lives, and what are we reliving, what are we remembering through each and every song? And now a good song, those songs that are called classics, if you will, do this in such a masterful way that they're never forgotten. And we embolden them in many ways. Many of you would think of the classics like Bach. I love Bach. I don't know if you like Bach. Bach was really good when you play guitar because it translates a lot to guitar very easily. So I played some Bach in my day and loved it very much in my guitar and other things. But I would argue even something like Bob Marley is a classic, right? You listen to Bob Marley, man, you can't be sad. You know what I'm saying? One love, one heart, let's get together and feel alright. I mean, there's no worries, not. We're all talking about it. As it was in the beginning, right? So shall it ever be. You know what I'm talking about. You feel me. You didn't get with me, but I know you're with me in heart. You couldn't quite do the Bob Marley thing. You wanted to go there, but you couldn't. I understand. But nonetheless, classics, right? They express something so powerfully, and I would argue to you that every one of the 150 songs is a masterpiece. Now, unfortunately, we have lost the musicality of these songs. They've been lost to the history of ages, and for a number of reasons. One, there's been a lot of war and things that happened, and they kind of got lost over time. Two, first of all, we read this in English instead of the original languages, and so even some of the rhythm and the beat, if you didn't know how Humpty Dumpty the rhythm goes, you just read it, right? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty. But if you translate that to Spanish, the rhythm may not be there anymore, right? So when we read this in English, you're going to lose some of the translation, some of the feeling and the vibe, and there's no way to really capture that from the original. But nonetheless, you can imagine the music of this lost music, this lost rhythm, and so there's this kind of sad thing when I come to the song, because I just wish we knew how they went. And so one of my first things I'm going to ask God to do when I get to heaven is just play some music. Right? I want to hear the Psalms as they were written and sung by the people of Israel, and they were sung for different things, different occasions, and different songs were expressing very specific things at different times of the year, and I'd love to hear that. Well, as we look at Psalm 1, there's a few things to point out. And again, it's kind of weird to dissect poetry and music, but we're going to try that here today to hopefully glean something from this and take it with us. And so if you think about all this, what this means in the book of Psalms, the first psalm is kind of important, right? Because it sort of sets the stage for all the other psalms that are going to be in here. For the rest of the pluckings, if you will, all 150 of them. And so we read, and I just want to read it again, is that okay? Now that you know what you're looking for. I want you to think about, what is this teaching? What is this expressing? What are some of the vivid imagery that is used in it? You ready? Only 6 verses, so don't go to sleep on me now. You're with me. All right, Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers. Not so the wicked, they are like chaff. The wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. The Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish.
Amen.
Amen. And as we see, I wish I could sing that to you, but I don't know how. I couldn't really put it to words. I'm not the greatest songwriter, if you will, for that. So, unfortunately, you won't get any music from me as we go along. Besides just my horrible singing. So, but as we go by, I wanted to think about, what does it express, what does it teach, and what is the vivid imagery that it uses? If you think about those things, a lot of times it will cut to the heart of what we need to take from each psalm. So, for instance, this psalm, if you really wanted to sum it up, it says this. If you really want to just kind of get one little tidbit. When you live life, you're going to go one of 2 ways. The way of the wicked, or the way of the righteous.
Amen.
Did you notice there wasn't really any verbiage for anything in between?
Amen.
And in fact, really, if you look at the whole Bible, this is a truth that's sort of throughout the whole entire thing, is that there's no in between. You're either on God's team, or you're not on God's team. And when you're not on God's team, God has set the world up in such ways that you're going to just constantly beat your head against a wall. And you're going to suffer and go through all these things. But if you follow God's ways, you'll be blessed. And yes, the world is going to hate you and do all it can to tear you down, but you're going to know a blessing despite whatever you go through in life. And this psalm wants to train us, before we get to any of the rest, there's a wickedness and a righteousness, and there's nothing in it. And so it explains to us a couple things. One of all, what it starts off with, blessed is the man, and it defines the blessed man, the righteous one, as these things, not doing these things, that is. They're not like the wicked or sit with the wicked. They're not with the scorners, if you will. They don't sit in the way of them. But it's like this. And then it goes unexplained. But here's what the righteous do. And then if you back up a little bit and remember what the wicked will be like. And then there's a vivid metaphor. And at the end, it defines again, hey, God likes the righteous and doesn't like the unrighteous. Or the wicked, if you will. We're taught, I think, in this world so many ways that this world is just merely shades of gray. That every decision that you make, there's always a good part of it, a bad part of it, so why try very hard to figure out which is which? Or even as our world becomes, in our world in the West, that is, in North America and the Western Europe becomes more and more atheistic, there's even the foundational, what is even truth or right or wrong in the first place. And so maybe, if you're coming from that, especially those watching it maybe at home, maybe just kind of checking out this Christianity thing, and you're coming from a world of gray, just for a moment, I want you to let yourself think differently and let this song speak to you. The song says God exists, first of all, and that good and evil are ultimate truths, and that every decision you make, every road you come across, every fork you take, it will bring you closer down of one of 2 paths. The way of the righteous and the way of the wicked. And then it wants to use imagery. I would say powerful, powerful imagery for what these two paths look like and what the life of one who follows them looks like. Now, we live in North America. Many of those around the world, you live by water and it rains all the time. I get it. But I want you to think for a minute you don't. And forget all the technology. You don't know what the rest of the world necessarily looks like. You grew up somewhere that was like Israel, where it was dry, where there's lots of stone, there's lots of sand, there are a lot of shrubs that you call trees, and there's the ocean and all that, but there's a whole lot of dirt, right? And a whole lot of dryness, and a whole lot of heat. Not only fairly hot, pretty hot and harsh climate comparatively to a lot of places in the world, and you didn't know anything else. But yet, what's cool about Israel is that there was a lot of stone where water could collect and come out, and so whenever it did rain, it was sometimes capped by different aquifers that would come out and cause streams to flow from out in the mountains. Or even some of the mountains up in the north were snow-capped during the year, and so it would actually melt even in the summer and come down and provide like the Jordan River and other rivers and streams there. And so, in this hot climate, when you would go down to a stream, you would see a true tree, not the little shrubs that were holding on for dear life to the rock, right, by your house, but the streams where water flowed, and things were green year-round. You can imagine what a tree would look like to you. A big, tall, beautiful tree whose leaves never wither. They're green, and they're greener than anything you see around your own house. And you look at this tall, deep tree that drinks deeply from the well of the river running beside it, the stream running beside it. Not only is it tall, not only is it green, but it bears fruit every season. And every time you hope it would, you don't have to worry about drought. You don't have to worry about the things that go on in the world and all the harshness that can happen and all the unexpected things that can happen. In season, always, it bears fruit because it's close to the source of its life. It's hard for us to imagine because we live, relatively green. You walk out and see green trees and all that stuff, and you think, what do we do? But think about how it was. The ancient Hebrews would come across such a tree. It was a magnificent tree. It was like, here's kind of what I would compare it to, is when you go to the movies, and not like the love movies, like, oh, I love you, but like the special effects blow your socks off. You know what I'm talking about, right? Where it's like, and at the end you go, whoa, that was awesome, let's do it again, right? I'll never forget, for me, that was, more than any other time, was the first Jurassic Park. I went with my family to go see it, and I was a kid, right? And you're talking dinosaurs on the screen coming to life, right? I talked about it, and I came home, I couldn't do anything else. I just had to talk and talk and talk. It was amazing. That's what this feeling was, the people who would see a tree such as that. But then it talks about the wicked, doesn't it? And I know many of you grew up in farmland. I didn't. I grew up in suburbia and also the city, and so I didn't grow up around harvesting wheat and other things. So I had to do some research. And so for those maybe growing up, going from other places in the world that are watching this, that don't have necessarily as much agriculture experience as I know many in this congregation do, I want to just quickly explain what is going on here in this imagery. And that is this, is that when they would harvest the wheat or the barley, specifically the wheat, let's talk about it, there would be a big celebration. The whole town would come together, the whole village would get together. And they would watch the workers as they would not only come in with these sheaves, just bundles of them, but they would place them in a mill. And the mill would have an oxen in it, and it would be tied to a sled. And on the bottom of the sled, there were rails that were sharpened. And they would go around and they would crush the wheat. And they would shred the wheat, if you will. They would go through and just shred it, and go around and around and around until it was a very fine kind of powder, if you will, a very fine consistency. They would take that, they would part it up, they would take it to a hill on the edge of town, a window, and they would take, equivalently like a pitchfork if you want to think of it that way, and the workers would take it, they would throw it in the air, and here's what happened. The seed, the valuable part, that was meaningful, was dense, and the wind didn't blow it. It would fall to the ground, and it would pile up. All the stuff that wasn't worth anything, the chaff that we call it, all those, the leafy part of the stem and all those different things that aren't the seed that you don't do anything with, were shredded up They were very less dense, they were very light, so the wind would just carry it off. Gone. Never to be seen again. Off the hill. You can imagine how the town would celebrate that pile of seed, the barley seeds. They would bring it back and make the first of the bread of the season and all these things. And the Bible, Psalm 1 wants us to think about the righteous like that tree, and the wicked like that chaff. In Ohio, I think of dandelion, right? Pick that dandelion, come on. And then it comes back in your yard because they're like everywhere and you can't kill them. But anyways, that's not the imagery here used here. That part doesn't analogize. But they take it to the cart, like I said, they throw it out, it's gone. And so you have the seed versus the chaff. The wicked are called the chaff. Drifting away into nothingness. And so I think this psalm, if we're going to sum it up real quickly, is this. Will you be righteous or wicked? You think about every decision we make, every action we take. It can be either guided by God or it can be guided by our own selfishness. And it's either a tree planted by streams of water that we become, or it's chaff to the wind.
Amen.
Let's pray. Lord, as we're here today, we thank you so much for your scripture. And especially the book of Psalms, Lord, it's just such a great book. And it expresses things that it's really hard to put in a sermon because they're so perfect the way they're written. But in some ways, it's enough for just us to read them. But Lord, as we're here today, we've tried to grow a little deeper and understand it maybe in a different way. And as we've done that, Lord, we hope that it's honored to you. We hope, Lord, that as we look at our lives, that we would see ourselves as trees planted by you, by the stream of water that gives life. But Lord, for many of us, maybe we come here today and we realize that many of our actions look a lot more like chaff blowing away in the wind. And maybe, Lord, even our hearts are convicted here today that, God, if we are true about ourselves, that, Lord, many more times we look like the chaff, and our character even looks like chaff than it does the tree. So, God, we do here today, for those that feel that in their hearts, feel that conviction, may, Lord, you impress upon them your grace, that, Lord, our righteousness does not come from our actions, what we do, but by the cross and the invitation to once again come into your arms. And so, Lord, we pray for those that would hear this message, that feel the conviction of your Spirit, and God, that they would accept you as Lord and Savior. And Lord, here in this moment, that they would pray to you for rescue and salvation. And that, Lord, even if they feel themselves as just a little sprout in the ground, that you would plant them at a stream. And that, God, they would grow to the mighty, mighty tree that brings life and fruit in season, and no matter what the weather brings. God, we pray all this in your holy and precious name. Amen.